Hello. This discussion really encouraged me to think outside the box philosophically. Going into the module, I definitely would have called myself a strict proponent of free will or the existence of free will, and I was aware that arguments against free will existed, but I didn't really understand them, and I certainly never took the time to understand both sides of the argument. When I read uh, Wayne Viney's article, I began to see things from a little bit more of a deterministic perspective, and so I decided to take that side of the argument because it really started to make a lot of sense to me. I feel like I laid out my point of view adequately, and I was happy with what I posted initially. But I really learned a lot about the issue from other people's responses, and by the end of the discussion, I felt like I had a much deeper understanding of the true complexity of the issue. Um, I was impacted by Bridget's idea that both determinism and free will are at play simultaneously, because I was going into the discussion with sort of a polarized mindset, that it's either one or the other, and she reminded me that there's always a gray area when we're discussing any aspect of human behavior. Abby did a nice job of driving the point home as well, emphasizing the importance of genetics on the deterministic side. Um, and so I was grateful for that because that's a pretty much a standard in psychology that when you have two opposing ideas, usually the truth is somewhere in the middle. And surprisingly, I didn't come into the discussion with that, um, from that perspective. So I was grateful for that, and I thought that Abby and Bridget's posts were good segues into the idea of distinguishing volitional choice from free will, because I think that that's an important distinction, and even though they seem like the same thing, they're actually not the same thing. Um, we do make choices, and but our choices are influenced, in my view, in a significant way by outside forces and internal forces like genetics. Leslie brought up this idea in her post, and I thought that it was a vital piece of discussion. I think it's like a subtle yet extremely important part of kind of what we're talking about, that distinction between free will and volitional choice. Samuel proposed the idea that free will varies as a function of the region that somebody grows up in and lives in, and I thought that pretty much that was an interesting idea. I mean, that blew my mind because I hadn't really thought about it from that angle. I mean, I knew that cultural, sociocultural factors were at play in sort of driving behaviors, and potentially determining choices, but I hadn't really thought of the degree to which causality plays a role in the human condition in response to the beliefs and values of a certain culture. So, like somebody from one culture may actually operate on free will to a higher degree than somebody from another culture. I thought that was a really interesting idea. Um, and let's see, Danielle brought up the idea that I had been thinking about actually since initially reading Viney's article in regard to morality and the criminal justice system and some of the implications, the moral implications of whether or not free will doesn't exist. There's certainly some moral implications, and specifically in regards to the criminal justice system. Currently, we punish people for breaking laws because we assume that they do so freely, and are, as a result, 100% culpable for the choice that they make. And I don't disagree that people are responsible for their actions, but I think that the role of causality should maybe be taken into consideration by the criminal justice system when crafting reform, individual reform, or punishments for criminals. I wonder if there's some way that we can manipulate the causes and conditions that lead up to somebody breaking the law, and in such a way that we could create reform in that individual without simply locking somebody in a cage as punishment. I think it's pretty clear that that's ineffective, and I think that maybe the ineffectiveness of the criminal justice system is to some degree evidence that there's more at play in the decisions that we make than simple free will. So anyway, I really gained a lot from this discussion, and I'm really grateful to the other members of the group for really opening my mind to the true complexity of the issue.